Jamie's information he gave us on extending internet when it terminates a certain thing. I thought I'd call it internet inclusion. Is that okay for you, Jamie, for the title? Okay, that would be item 7.4 for going to be called internet inclusion. We'll discuss the information that Jamie gave us. So to add that to the agenda, I'll need a 2/3 majority that doesn't mind that being put into the regular agenda. So do I actually ask for a motion, Beverly, or just simply look for a show of hands? You're muted. Okay, would you please raise your hand if you're in favor of including that? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's 2/3.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now that's included in our agenda. Is there any other items anyone would like to add? If not, I'd like to look for a mover to approve the agenda by way of hand. Okay, Tom approved it, second by Jamie. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, the agenda is ready to go. Next is number 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Anyone got any particular financial, etc. interest that has to be disclosed? Looks like there's none. First item up, approval of the previous minutes. The one is September 23rd, the Telecommunications meeting minutes. Are there any errors or omissions you'd like to mention before we approve it? If not, I'd like a mover and a seconder for those minutes by way of hand. Moved by Donna, seconded by Jamie. All those in favor, raise your hand. It's approved. Next is the special meeting, advisory meeting we had on November 8th. Are there any errors or omissions there? Seeing none, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Tom moves it, seconded by Amy. Are you okay with that? Approve you're here. I think she approved it. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, carried. No presentations, no deputations. Item 7.1, project progress report on SWIFT projects in Norfolk County. I sort of kicked this around. I talked with Brent earlier. Things are very dynamic. They keep moving all the time. I know like Turkey Point, I'm sure is done, and maybe Boston, some other. Brent, could you just mention what places are finished by SWIFT and what are still have to be done?
The update I know of is Turkey Point, which includes Normandale, is completed. It was completed earlier this year, if not last, but I think it was earlier this year. To my understanding, Rogers is completed. There are people that are acquiring service now. So, and I'm using completed as in they have the fiber in the ground to Waterford and everywhere else. Does every resident have service right now? Probably not. They're still on a long list of getting that service. But I know that they have completed most of the installation. They are working right now. Rogers is working on getting their fiber to our facilities as well. So but from my understanding, what the project included, where the actual, I'm going to call backbone of the fiber, it's all done.
Yeah.
To my understanding, Long Point is not done, but I do believe ExecuLink is working out to try to do some type of wireless backhaul to Long Point to then start deploying it. Where they are right now, I can follow up unless Councillor Michele knows. I can follow up with them, but I don't believe that's they have fiber in Long Point as of yet. Like they haven't.
No, they haven't
yet.
done it. Yeah, they haven't done anything in Long Point. We actually talked to a few of them when they were down there this summer, because obviously with our real estate business, everyone's asking when it's coming. So they kind of, last time I talked to them, they really didn't have any idea as to when that was going to happen. They were kind of hoping to tie it in with the causeway, I think, but I don't know if that's going to happen now.
Okay. Further comments or questions for Brent? Tom? I'm sorry, Councilor Michele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Brent has pretty much most of that. Just from the SWIFT point of view, the Turkey Point and Wilsonville projects are considered to be 100% complete and in service. Long Point, as Amy's also talked about, has not even started. There are some remaining permitting issues that have to be resolved. So ExecuLink, the provider there, has actually redeployed most of their resources to some other SWIFT projects in other municipalities. But the latest, and in fact, maybe it's timely we're having our meeting today, I received an update from SWIFT today. They have pushed the completion date, the projected completion date for Long Point, to the end of June of 2022. And I still am kind of waiting on word as to whether or not that also in their projections, which I do not think they have included, is the possible delays with the causeway construction, because obviously they want to coordinate that fiber line with the roadway. So the official sort of projected date is June 2022, but that could change with any developments which are still not known by the county about the construction of the actual causeway roadway, because they are focused entirely on the bridge right now.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Michelli. Any other comments on this particular items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 7.2, Rogers UBF application. That's the Universal Broadband Fund that was discussed. Councilor Michelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and we did discuss some of this at our November 8th meeting, and I think the clerk has indicated and informed everybody about some of the need to be confidential about some of that information. But my latest communication with Rogers regarding that application that's been made is that everything appears to be favorable and is on track, and they are anticipating an announcement from the Universal Broadband Fund people by the end of December. So hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope that that is going to be positive. And from there, we just have to wait. But and again, as I think I maybe have mentioned at the November 8th meeting, there has been a cabinet shuffle in the federal government, which is where the source of this funding is. And so I believe that there is also some wait time for transition between ministers in that portfolio. So that's, but anyway, that is hopeful that we'll get some kind of announcement by the end of December. And as I said, the Rogers people are feeling very good about their prospects. So we will just have to keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilor Michelli? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 7.3, update on security. Brent, anybody withholding their taxes over the internet? Just kidding. Update us on that.
Yeah, so I thought it'd be timely to kind of go through what the county is experiencing from a risk standpoint. The county over the past couple of months is implementing a number of security measures based on recent attacks from ransomware and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to go over through some of the different processes we're implementing. So first of all, one of the biggest areas is training, and that is staff training. And that is to do with being able for staff to be more and more aware of what phishing is. So email phishing is where an email message comes in. It may suspiciously look like it may be coming from a bank, or maybe from Amazon or somewhere else, where they will try to deceive you to click on a link. And then that link could download malicious ransomware type software onto the computer that then would immediately spread throughout our organization to encrypt data or to steal data from various servers that it can get access to. That is one thing that is very prevalent, that we have, that every staff member must start reviewing and learning more about how to understand what a phishing message looks like. So what we are actually starting to do is we will be having our own phishing scams, and those scams will come into the system, And if someone clicks on the link or downloads the attachment, they will be informed that they have been fallen prey to a ransomware attack, but it was a test. And then they'll be asked to continue on to learn more and more about how to train and how to be more aware of it. So that's kind of this is how we're going to do it to learn it. So once you fall into it and you understand it, you kind of learn more about it. So it is something that we're implementing, and all staff will have to go through a training process, but at the same time, they will have what we call a security score. So right now, I'm sure everybody's aware, if you wanted to get your credit score, you can go online, you can see what your credit rating is like. Well, the county will be providing a security score. And the higher that security score is, the more and more you'll be required to take more and more training to get that score down. We want the score to be low, not high, because anyone's high is a person that we would be concerned about clicking on something that could cause a ransomware attack within our organization. I can give you we just started the application now, but next meeting, I'm more than willing to do a little demonstration of the product we are using, so you can kind of see what we're talking about. But it is nice. And then what will happen is, as we see what people can do is, if they see something that's malicious, they can simply click on a link in their email saying, I would like to report this as phishing, which also helps us because we can monitor these. And if we actually see real phishing events, we can go through and make sure that they don't continue to come into our environment. So there's definitely some security enhancements with that. Along with that, there'll be other security measures we'll be training on with cell phones and so on, and basically remote access. So that's one level of training. So we're trying to get more and more people aware of what this looks like and how these attacks happen. Because a lot of times, and a lot of municipalities have fallen prey, and hospitals have fallen prey to these. A lot of times they don't get their data back. They've lost the data. It's taken them weeks, if not months, to get all their systems back up and running. It's a sizable amount of cost, and insurance companies are requiring that if you have cyber insurance, that you have this training in place for all staff. So we're implementing that. Another area, being that we are having a lot of people working from home remotely or working accessing their email.
Donnie, want to answer your question now? Or you want to leave to the end? You're muted.
Muted. Sorry, I didn't see this question.
Don, you're muted.
Is there any incentive for staff? I know it's really nice to get boy, you did a really good job and you caught that piece of spam coming in or whatever. Is there any further sort of incentive to make it really worth their while?
That's a good question. I'm thinking that's something we're going to probably want to look at implementing as we go along. We're just starting this off, and it's something that I think people even at home should be more aware of, because they could lose important information even on their home computers. So I think it's something we're going to be starting, and I think what we'll probably do is, there is a month, I believe it's October, that's called Security Awareness Month. So I think probably what we'll do is next year we'll plan to do some type of incentive where we can look at our ones that are going through and making sure and see if we can incentivize it a little bit. Because you're right, just looking at a score saying it's low doesn't really mean much to us. But the other factor is if they realize is if their score is very, very high, the county, we have to also be prevalent of how to deal with their actions and how to deal with their accounts. And I can't go to the fact of where we disable account because they have to have access to do their job, but we have to be on them more. So it's a very good idea, and it's something to consider for next year for sure.
Yeah, because I know working for the federal government, getting those nice little emails, you caught us, but that was one of our tricks, rather than you actually reported the real thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes you get your message saying you reported the real things and thank you, but nobody gave you a nickel for it either.
Well, it's a good idea, and I think it's something I can look at for when we get into it next year, and maybe timing it through like I said, the Security Awareness Month would be a good time to do it.
Sounds like a good place, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further comments, Brent or Tom? Do you have, Councilor Shelley? Do you have a question? No.
No. The only thing I guess I would just mention that from my perspective, as a person who maybe as not a regular staff person, but I also can fall victim to some of those phishing scams, is that I personally kind of think that the best incentive is not going through the embarrassment of getting caught. You know? And
So
that's always my biggest fear.
so good or bad, Councilor Michelle, being that you have an account on Norfolk County system, you will be going through the training as well next year. So you will be learning more and more about it. But yes, it's embarrassing for some people when they do get caught. I know, and so we'll try to deal with that best we can when we come to those kind of incidents. I agree with you though; it kind of gets embarrassing. If there's nothing more about the training, I was going to go into another part of what we're doing. So the other area we're working also on is, and I think I've taught and raised this before, but multi-factor authentication is another area that we've now implemented. Multi-factor authentication is we're trying to do more and more with identity management to validate that you are who you say you are. Just having a password. What's happening more and more is people tend to use the same passwords when they use external systems as well as county systems. So if I log into an external system, like for example, Amazon, and I use the same password that I've been using in my Norfolk County account, and then Amazon happens to get a security breach, that password gets leaked to people that can hack at my account. That's happening. And right now, when we did the security awareness training, you'll be learning more and more about where your passwords or your account was actually part of a breach. I myself, I've been working for the county for 20 years. My email address has been breached 9 times over the past number of years. And those 9 times, of course, I've changed those passwords and I didn't even aware of it, but it did tell me that I had been breached. If anyone is interested in figuring out if you've ever been part of a breach, there is a website, and I can have the information provided to the clerk, but it's called haveibeenpwned.com. And if you can put in your email address there, it will tell you if your email address was ever been part of a security breach, which would therefore have been a password that you would have used whenever you had used it. So with identity management and MFA, there's got to be a second way of validating who you are, either getting a text message on your cell phone or a phone call from a number, some other piece of factor of identity. Sometimes we can give a card that has a number on it. We can assign that card. So when you log in, you have to put that number in to validate that you are who you say you are. So it's a second form of validating besides your password that you are who you are. And we are implementing that countywide. So anyone that has a cell phone and wants to access email or works from home and wants to access their email or anything like that, they will have to have some other method to validate their identity before they can authenticate to the system. Any questions with regard to that?
Donna?
Okay, is it required that they have the second factor and that if they have a cell phone, they use their own personal cell phone? Because quite honestly, I'm tired of the bank and the government of Canada and everybody else, including Microsoft, wanting to use my phone that I pay for as a second factor.
So there are other options. So there is, instead of using your actual number, there is a security application, an app for your phone that you can use. So you could still use your personal phone if you wanted to, but you could use this app on the phone that would then approve who you are. So you don't actually have to publicly give them your number. That's one option. Another option is, again, these token cards. So it's a token device that has a randomized number on it that is assigned to you. That token card can be used. I know that the security, the banks and so on and so forth have been using numbers, but they'll probably move away from numbers more and more and try to use more of the application-based type software. Numbers, they're learning more and more. Text numbers can be hacked. An SMS message can be hacked. So it is, even though it is a second form of identity, it is a weaker form of identity than other methods. The next one that they are looking at doing is biometrics. So that's thumbprint, fingerprint, scan print. or facial print. And that is something that a lot of companies are more working on. So for example, my laptop here, being that I have an infrared camera on my phone, on my computer, and it has to be an infrared. If you just use your camera, you could fake that by using a picture of myself. Infrared looks at my face and then also looks for different how it's contoured and so on and so forth. So that is a way of doing facial recognition without being able to spoof it by having a picture of yourself. So there are different technologies that they're using right now. They're working on and that a lot of companies are using for multi-factor besides just a phone number.
Because I can remember having a fob when I worked for the federal government. And basically, I pressed a button on to gain access to the international telephone network. I pressed a button on that gave me my numerical code for this time only. And then, you know, press the button when you were done and you got a new one next time.
We have those. We are offering those for county staff, but we haven't had a lot of uptake on it yet. Not to say it's not needed, but people are, you know, a card, a fob, or whatever you want to call it, can easily get lost, and it can be a nuisance too. So, but it is one of another. It is definitely a better, more secure option than a cell phone number or a phone number.
Yeah, I don't trust cell phones, I can tell you.
Sorry, go ahead, Brent.
So besides that, if we have nothing more on a multi-factor, there's one other area of security that we are working on. Well, there's a couple others, but I'll start with one other. So we have a number of vendors that remotely access our environment to do updates on our server infrastructure. And we don't have any type of way of managing their authentication piece or monitoring what they're having access to. So we're having more controls in how we allow contractors or other vendors into our server environment or our network environment. So we are putting in measures for that. And with that, there'll be what they call recordings. So any vendor connecting into our systems, when they're on our systems, the whole session will be recorded so we can see what they're doing. That is another area we're working on. It's called Privilege Access Management, which is short form is PAM. So it's controlling who has access, and also at the same time, we're controlling the passwords being used. So we can't use a standard password for our administrator that account that we're using to access all our server equipment. We have to use this software that randomizes the passwords and controls the passwords and gives us more control. So that's just another area we are working on. And then, of course, with all that, we are looking at disaster recovery and business continuity planning. And with that, with the disaster recovery and business continuity, we need to look at ransomware as a part of our disaster recovery for just look at how to deal with a ransomware incident and have the proper planning in place. And we have to go through that testing and making sure it works properly. So that's a lot of work on a back end. And so there is quite a bit involved with security more and more for an IT department with any organization to manage. And I could say it's a full-time job, but it really is, but we are sharing it the best we can to deal with all these different security inhibitors. So I just thought I would give this as an update. And maybe should have been done maybe a month ago because it would have been security awareness, but we are struggling with a lot of different changes right now. And a lot of these have come, they're due and they're required and they're needed and they're necessary, but they are coming more and more because insurance companies are requiring them because if you want to have cyber insurance, because they are seeing some hefty charges or hefty fines that they have to cover from ransomware attacks right now.
Okay. Further questions for Brent? Just a comment on my behalf. When I was the director on Norfolk Power, one of the things we did, and this is quite a few years ago, we actually hired an external company to do an attack on the computers at Norfolk Power. It was quite interesting. They came back with a report. I'm really glad that Brent's proactive in dealing with the security issues for the county. I think we had to pay $25,000 back then. That was over 10 years ago. Plus, we got about a 20 or 30 page report on it. But they did point out some vulnerabilities to us. So, anyways, thanks, Brent.
Yeah, we've had that done. We had that done last year, so we have the results from that, and we've already made those changes. But we have had contractors in, and we try to do that every 2 years, to have a contractor in and just do different tests on our environment to see what you can see externally. So we have had that done. Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you, Brent. Okay, if we can move on to 7.4, the one that was added, the dealing with internet inclusion. Beverly, can you bring that up so people can see it in case they haven't had a chance to read it yet? I did send it out to everybody with the email, so if you can you pop that on the screen for us? Or should I just read it to everybody?
I can do it if Beverly, if you're having trouble, I can do it too if you want.
Should be good. There we go. Can you all see that?
It looks like a screen capture.
We're just seeing your email right now.
That is this not what you're talking about, Lauren?
No, actually, it's below. It says hi, Lauren, draft summary below it. It's the information below it. I was hoping we could display for the sake of the committee in case some people haven't read it yet, unless Brent can throw it up for us.
Brent, do you have access to it?
Yeah, he sent it to me. Just give me 1 second. I'll have it up for it. 1 second. 1 second. All right. So is this what you're talking about, Lauren?
Yes, yeah. If you can pull it up a bit so we can see the whole document or the whole discussion.
Yeah, hang on.
In case people haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Let me see
Yeah,
if I can
I
zoom
think that's pretty well. You got the whole thing and ends at least. I just give the people a quick minute to read that if they like, or can. Because most people read it. Jamie, as the author, do you want to make a comment on this at first, please?
Yeah, sure. In our previous meeting on September 23rd, we had some discussion about how sometimes a fiber project will end maybe partway down a street or at an intersection, and someone, within sight of the project is left unserviced. And we were wondering if there was something that could be done to potentially include them if they were interested, at least. And we'd asked the question, but we weren't really clear on exactly what we wanted. So we were asked to maybe clarify that and come back with a more clear direction to the county if they could sort of do a bit of a investigation into what they think might be feasible. So, or at least that's how I recalled it. So that's what I drafted up here, is just sort of outlining the type of program we were wondering if it would be feasible or not, to would sort of have some inclusivity for people that are nearby.
Okay. Comments by anybody? Donna?
I think there's a real risk here that if you try and extend a project by including the immediate neighbors, then somebody else says, but, and then you have to constantly expand it or disappoint people. And I know that, being able to extend it to the next door neighbor who's gone through the morass of mud to get to their house for 6 months while this was going on is a nice thing. But it's not always possible. And where do we stop inching out?
Well, I think the idea is to not stop inching out. I think the idea is to service everyone in Norfolk County at some point. And so this might be a bit of a moot point since our last emergency meeting. But I think if you were going to do something like this, you need to have a window where there's the time for comment and to, put up your hand and say, I'd like to be included if it's possible. And once that window's closed, then, there is no more me too down the street at that point.
But you could start that. That's the problem that I
I
see.
agree. Yep, I agree.
Thing I'm looking at is it's similar to the sewer system or the water, that you take a particular subdivision. I remember in Delhi, the one on the west side of town, the county made a decision that everyone would have sewers instead of the septic system because it was getting absorbed by the town. And basically what they did, and they went in there and said, everybody's got to have a hookup to the new sewer system. You can either pay for the installation directly, or if you want, it can be put on your taxes. So what I'm sort of thinking along this line is that as the internet is going to be such a valuable tool for everyone, we should start looking at possible policies where that if enough people in a particular area or there's a project, it may be a situation where the people in that area that don't want to sign up will be forced to contribute either in the long term or the short term, but they're going to end up being benefited from it. So I wonder if we can ask staff if they could look up similar policies for sewer systems or maybe even gas systems. I know hydro works that if you have hydro to the road, let's say single phase or 3-phase at the road, but you want to go 5 miles up, that the hydro will put 3-phase in 5 miles up to that person who wants it, and they pay the shot for the whole construction. But as things progress, if somebody else along that route decides they want to be hooked up to 3-phase, they would have to in turn contribute, and some of those funds would go back to the original author of that run. So that's where you get into this fill-in thing. I don't know if it makes it complicated or not, but I think it's something worth pursuing. Donna, you want to comment, please?
Well, I think, okay, I'm married to, I think I could generously call him a techno peasant. Okay. I'm not sure that there's a significant senior population in Norfolk County, and being forced to contribute their perhaps dwindling financial resources to funding the internet just might be problematic, and I think it would be difficult. I would like the internet, but I'm not sure my husband in similar circumstances would.
Okay. Councilor Michelle, you were going to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, but I would prefer, if you don't mind, to go to Brent first because he's been waiting.
Okay, Brent, go ahead.
Actually, I think Amy should go first. She's got her hand raised. So
Amy,
I'm
sorry,
just trying to help with
I can't see
Amy
your
first.
hand.
So
Yeah,
Amy,
well, there you
so
are.
it's gonna go Amy, Brent, and then Tom.
Okay, fine. I can see your smile, Amy, because you just have the.
That sounds
I guess
fine.
I'm the secondary chair here. Sorry.
Amy, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Just as Jamie made a note on the bottom there about his concern that this could lead to exclusions being done on purpose. And I'm actually a current exclusion. And the reason that I'm an exclusion is because it's at the end of my street, but there's a creek along the way that they have to cross to come down to me. And they're telling me that the permitting and the, whatever, because it's water, is a big issue. So I'm currently one of those where I could guarantee you pretty much the whole street would be 100% in favor of being able to pay to have this service brought in. So what you talked about, Lauren, in Delhi, they did the same thing in St. Williams when they brought in the water. And it's an additional tax that's put on your taxes till it's paid off. And while I agree with Donna that there are a lot of people that maybe don't use the internet, look at it as an investment into your property, because if the neighbor next door has ExecuLink internet and you don't when you go to sell, and they can't just get it, it is going to ultimately, in the end, have an effect on your value. So it doesn't only just affect you as a person, it affects your property in the future. And I think these are all things that Norfolk County needs to look at. Do they consider it to be something like the water, like Lauren mentioned, or the sewer, where it's a local improvement that's added to your taxes until it's paid off, or you can pay it up front? They were given that option in St. Williams as well. But I am one of those exclusions, and I would 100% pay to have it brought in, not only for my own use, but knowing that it increases my value of my property as well.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Brent?
The reason why I raised my hand is I'm trying to, and this is where I don't know. You're talking to the IT guy, and this is public works or engineering services that deals with how stuff is run, and I don't know if they're monitoring or tracking how cable goes down the road and how we jump into that to then say if it's going down here, are we communicating to the whole community that this fiber is going down this line? I know with a SWIFT project, and I can tell you with the SWIFT project, that was a separate project. When we did that, anywhere the fiber ran by any house, that was we specified that they had to offer them service. But you know, if it goes up to one intersection and turns right, someone on the left is not getting it, and I understand that. And you're saying, well, how can we deal with that? I from my standpoint right now, I'd have to validate with our engineering services group how we can get involved or how that can be looked at from a public or from a community approach, because it's not like a planning application where we're doing this. There's no formal announcement to the community that this is happening. So I don't know. That's where I'm, and I don't. I've been in municipality for 20 years, and I don't know how that's. I don't think they treat fiber optic cabling like they do a gas pipe or a water line, is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Councilor Michelle.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess I kind of have three things. First, and I can only right now speak about the SWIFT projects in this regard, but there have been occasions where the ISP in the two SWIFT projects that we currently have completed, Turkey Point and Wilsonville, have made some adjustments to requests by people who were, just on that fringe area. And so that is always a possibility. It's obviously it's not easily done, and I think that in some cases I have been told, even outside of the SWIFT projects, that there have been some successful requests by people in the fringe areas with various ISPs in the county. I'm very much aware of the situation that Amy and the people on Dedrick Road in Port Rowan are facing. And that is a matter of that particular ISP being Execulink. I am very hopeful, and Amy, this is kind of for you and everybody on that road, that when the SWIFT project, which is also Execulink, gets going, that little gap there, because as you know, the problem is the water area, and so my point is that there have been some examples of some flexibility by the ISPs to accommodate people in some circumstances. Obviously, having said that, as Brent mentioned, if the fiber is going right at an intersection, it's not going to go left. That's just not a part of the business plan that these ISPs can support. But I do think there is a little bit of hope in those areas. The other thing, the second thing I want to mention is that the actual managing of this and having these issues presented before council, I just think that could be an awful lot of squeezing for not much juice, and very time consuming, frankly. And I guess speaking of time in that prospect, the third thing I might mention is that, if we do get the Rogers Universal Broadband Fund proposal approved, that is going to be a total game changer for everybody.
Thank you, Tom. Jamie?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. One, I agree with Councillor Michelle in that if the universal program comes in, then this becomes a moot point, provided they don't see the same sort of issues, like, oh, there's one house and there's a culvert we have to go past, and it's just not worth it, right? Secondly, I think the more that the county can look at internet infrastructure as as a county infrastructure that improves everything about the county as far as, you know, bringing people in for residents or businesses and all those things, as more of an investment that way, as opposed to just another utility that they do what they want and it's none of our business. I think that benefits the entire county. Yeah, the third point is that, yeah, I just want to agree with what Amy said there about increasing your property value. You may not want it to your property because you don't want to pay the dollar value for it, but this is about sort of coming into the modern era here. It's not going away. So I think that's it.
Councilor Michele?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add to what Jamie just mentioned, and Amy is probably the best qualified person to comment on this, but you know, I don't think people who are trying to sell houses that have absolutely no prospect of internet connection are getting nearly the price that they would like.
Yeah, I guess the other reality too is that everything's getting smart, and that everything's, you know, is smart fridge, stuff like that come down the road. So you need the internet, the fiber, to run all your smart devices. And even older people, in terms of securities and other issues with them, and going to your doctor, stuff like that, instead of just a phone call, you can actually do a video. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to Councilor Michele, absolutely, 100%, you're correct. The first question that I am asked when somebody's looking at a home is, what's the internet like? And that's why we find a lot, like, because everyone's working from home today, right? And they want that access, and they eliminate properties immediately if they don't have good internet. Like my property, for example, I'd have to tell people, you can't use video when you have a meeting. So you literally have to disclose these things to clients today, and it does affect the value of the property. And Jamie makes a really good point. It's not just about your value of your home, it's about the value of Norfolk as a whole, to get businesses to come here. They're not going to come here if they can't get proper internet to be able to use all of their devices at the same time. And again, Lauren, you're correct too with the smart home stuff. And you know, everybody streams TV. They don't have satellite anymore. Most people stream. So all of these things, 100%, I agree, Councilor Michele, that it does have a value impact.
Further comments? Okay, where do we, Donna, you had a comment? No?
No, I just would like to know how people's budgets increase to accommodate all this amongst the seniors.
Jamie?
I just wanted to point out, I think at one point we had talked about, I don't remember the details exactly, but maybe the county is contributing some money to certain build out plans in the county. And I don't know if that actually went through to council or not, whether it was just something we discussed or whether it went through. But if we're going to contribute money, rather than broadly saying we'll throw in, you know, $500,000 or something, maybe putting it towards offsetting these costs might be a better option, rather than just broadly throwing it out there, because you know, Rogers is considering doing this anyway, you know, whether we're throwing in money or not. So maybe we can spend that better.
I think the other point with, in terms of the cost to the individual, like what they did, the water and sewer, and that was Van Perry subdivision, that's what it was. The people had an option. They could pay up front for all the cost, or it simply would be embedded in their taxes paid over the next, I think, 20 years. And so what you got into, if fiber is going to add the value to your home, it's sort of covered by how much more your house is going to be worth. So it's one of those things. You do have an option not to actually pay it. It's simply part of your home. And so what happens down the road, you know, it'll be covered in the house. So what I'm trying to see if that maybe there are other counties or other areas that have come up with policies relating to this, and maybe something we could do as a committee is start examining some of the gas policies, maybe the county, how do they deal with the water and sewer issue when they take over a subdivision that's only on septic tanks and wells. So that's something we could look at. Okay, further comments? Amy, sorry, I missed you. Amy?
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just going to add that if this helps anybody with the language, it's called a local improvement charge. So when the county decides that they're going to do something like this, like they did in St. Williams, and bring in municipal water, they go to each household is notified, and they say, hey, you want to pay the $8,000 up front, or would you like to put it over your taxes over the next 20 years? So the guy next door, his taxes may have a local improvement charge on it, and yours may not because you paid it up front. So this is a very common thing that you see with all of these types of things, water, sewer, whatever it may be. And in my opinion, in today's world, and I think that's what Jamie's trying to say as well, is the internet's almost just as important as your water and sewer. Like, people work from home, people want to come here and need internet. So it does have an effect on everything, but that's something that you may want to consider in the language is, can we make this a local improvement charge?
Okay, good. Okay, where can we go with this? Councilor Michelle, where would we go with this? Can we make a sort of ask Brent or somebody else to sort of look into it or interface with the engineering department about possibilities of examining some of the current local improvement charges, how they embed them?
I think that might be of value. As Amy's indicated, I think that there is probably somewhere out there some kind of a template for managing this kind of thing, and it certainly might be worth asking Brent if he could check on this a bit further, because whether it's gas or sewer or now internet, I mean it's a pretty essential infrastructure item. So I am kind of wondering or thinking that there must be some municipalities out there who have got to be ahead of this.
Good. Brent, are you okay with that?
So are you asking, just to clarify, are you asking me to do further research on other municipalities to see if they're considering or including this as a local improvement charge, or how they're handling these types of charges? Or are you asking me to take it to our GM of environmental services on our CAO to ask them about considering it? Which one is it, or is it both? I guess I just want to understand what you're asking me to do.
Chair, it's Amy. I was just going to say, I think you have to do step 1 before you can do step 2.
Right.
Like, I think you need to know what the others are doing and who else has done it. I'll throw it out there to my realtor group and see if there's any realtors that know of local improvement charges because of internet infrastructure. And if I happen to find somebody, I'll let you know what municipality, but they're the right people to ask because we have to check taxes, right? So they would know if they've seen one before.
Thank you.
I can definitely see what information I can collect from other municipalities. I do have other ways, either through the clerk's department. They can help me with soliciting other municipalities to see if they have considered anything with regard to a local improvement charge for internet access. That's one area. There's other areas, but I can start with the clerk's department and see if they might be able to help me question other municipalities and see if they're considering that or are doing that right now.
Hey, Jamie, as the author of this, are you satisfied with this route?
Yeah, I think this is an improvement on what we started with.
Okay, very good. Maybe we should have a motion that sort of gives direction on this. Would that be appropriate, Beverly?
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay, Jamie, would you like to move a motion that we continue examining the local improvement charges or something along that line?
Yes.
Okay, that'd be the mover. I'm looking for a seconder.
I think it's Amy, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Amy, sorry, I missed you again. The Amy is the seconder. Any discussion
Yes.
about this? Could you wordsmith that for us, Beverly?
Sure. So do you just want to, a motion to have staff look further into the local improvement charges of abiding municipalities?
Yes, regarding the internet or build out of internet fiber, I guess, something like that. Like, so we make sure it's just that domain.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments or questions about the motion? Okay, seeing none, looking for a show of hands. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. Amy, 4. Okay, opposed? Oh, sorry, that was unanimous. Thank you, Donna. I missed you. And there is behind your name. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks again, Jamie, for doing the research on that and bringing it forth. Now, moving along, communications, none. Other business. I got 9.1 is the TAC proposed working plan. I think what happened just a minute ago was spawned from having a list like that was put together by Aaron Plant. Now, Beverly, any luck to bring that up so we can just take a quick look at it? Okay, so this is sort of the template that we could start looking at in terms of possibilities, and it's part of your package in terms of so for example, the project, the local improvement charge, I don't know if that fits in the first one, and the committee lead would be Jamie, staff support would be Brent, and the status would be ongoing. We could start completing that. Would that work for you, Jamie?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we'll start filling this project sheet in. So is that the first one, I guess? Okay, so minutes, okay. That'd be local improvement. Local improvement chart. Committee lead would be Jamie. Staff support would be Brent. And the status, I guess, is ongoing. Now, anyone, somebody wants to put their name in or get going with it, or so simply just, it's a reminder that's where we're starting to look at and try and focus in on some of these projects and see where we're going with it. Okay, not seeing any volunteers, we'll leave that with the committee, if that's okay with the committee. Okay, that brings us to the next meeting date, and I think that'll be the last Thursday in January. Beverly, do you have that date on your calendar so we can put that in the minutes?
So, January 26th.
Okay. Okay. Now, is there a chance we'll be back to actually seeing real people or not? Not yet. Still, we might be virtual. I guess we play it by ear, see what happens. So,
Yes.
okay. Any further discussion or meeting for we asked for mover in a second when the next meeting will be? Okay, so I guess that, yeah. So we don't go to the next meeting. That's just a matter of fact, isn't it? So now we need a motion to adjourn unless somebody else is commenting. Looking for somebody to move that we adjourn the meeting. Jamie, second. And I see we lost Don. Okay. Need a seconder. Tom. Okay. All those in favor, show their hand. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for attending. See you in January. Have a nice holiday coming up. Thank you.
You too, Lauren. Thank you, everyone.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Good night.
Happy holidays. Bye
Good
now.
night. Thank
Happy
you.
holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everybody. Bye.